My name is Clara Mitchell, and this is the story of how one man's cruelty became the greatest catalyst for my transformation. The night my world shattered was supposed to be a celebration. I was 32 years old when I received the promotion I had worked toward for 3 exhausting years. 3 years of late nights, missed weekends, sacrificed friendships, and endless dedication to a company that finally recognized my worth. I remember clutching the email notification on my phone, my hands trembling with joy as I read the words again and again. Senior Marketing Director. It was real. It was mine. I had earned it. I rushed home that evening, my heart pounding with excitement, already imagining how Daniel would react. I pictured him sweeping me into his arms, spinning me around the living room, opening a bottle of champagne we had been saving for a special occasion. I imagined us toasting to my success, to our future, to everything we were building together. But when I burst through the door of our apartment, breathless and beaming, Daniel barely looked up from his laptop. He was sitting on the couch in his usual spot, his tie loosened, his shirt wrinkled from a long day at the office. The television played some sports recap in the background, but his attention was fixed on whatever was on his screen. I stood there in the doorway, waiting for him to notice me, waiting for him to ask about my day, waiting for him to care. Finally, I could not contain it any longer. The words burst out of me like champagne from a shaken bottle. Daniel, I got the promotion. He glanced up, his expression neutral, almost bored. Oh, that's nice, Clara. That is nice? My smile faltered. I tried again, stepping closer, hoping maybe he had not fully understood. Daniel, this is huge. This is the position I have been working toward for years. My salary is increasing by 40%. I will be leading the entire marketing division. He closed his laptop slowly, leaning back against the couch cushions with a smirk that I had seen too many times before. It was the expression he wore when he thought he knew something I did not, when he thought he was about to teach me a lesson. Clara, do not get too excited, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. I froze. What do you mean? He stood up, walking past me toward the kitchen, grabbing a beer from the refrigerator. He popped the cap off with casual indifference, taking a long sip before turning back to me. I mean, it is just a job, babe. Do not let it go to your head. My chest tightened. Just a job? Daniel, this is my career. This is something I have worked incredibly hard for. He shrugged. Sure. But let us be real here. You are good at what you do. I will give you that. But it is not like you are irreplaceable or anything. The words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood there, stunned, my excitement draining away and replaced by a hollow, sinking feeling in my stomach. Why would you say that to me? Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. As if I was being ridiculous for being hurt. Come on, Clara. I am just keeping you grounded. Someone has to. You have always been a little too sensitive about this stuff. Too sensitive. That phrase. He used it all the time. Whenever I expressed hurt, disappointment, or frustration, he dismissed it as me being too sensitive. As if my feelings were an inconvenience to him. As if I was the problem for having emotional reactions to his cruelty. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. I thought you would be happy for me. He walked back over to the couch, sitting down heavily, his beer in hand. I am happy for you, babe. I just do not think you need to make such a big deal out of it. It is a corporate job. You will do well, you will get your paycheck, and life will go on. That is it. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not when he would only use them as further proof that I was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. I turned away, heading toward the bedroom, needing space to process what had just happened. But Daniel was not done. Hey, Clara, he called after me, his voice almost playful now. I stopped, my hand on the bedroom doorframe. You know you will never find someone better than me anyway, right? I turned slowly, my heart pounding, not sure I had heard him correctly. What did you just say? He grinned, that infuriating, smug grin that made my blood boil. I said, you will never find someone better than me. So do not let this promotion make you think you are too good for me or something. Because you are not. The room spun. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could do was stare at the man I thought I loved, the man I had built my life around, and realize with devastating clarity that he did not see me as an equal. He saw me as something beneath him, something he tolerated, something he believed was lucky to have him. I did not respond. I could not. I walked into the bedroom, closed the door behind me, and sank onto the edge of the bed. And for the first time in our 3-year relationship, I allowed myself to wonder if Daniel Price was the biggest mistake I had ever made. That night marked the beginning of the end, though I did not know it yet. Over the following weeks, Daniel's words echoed in my mind relentlessly. You will never find someone better than me. They played on repeat, like a cruel soundtrack to my daily life. Every time I looked at him, I heard them. Every time he made another dismissive comment, another belittling joke, another passive-aggressive remark, I heard them. And slowly, something inside me began to shift. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way he interrupted me during conversations. The way he spoke over me when we were with friends. The way he made decisions about our life together without consulting me, as if my opinion was optional. The way he flirted with other women right in front of me, then told me I was being paranoid when I called him out on it. I started realizing that Daniel had spent 3 years making me feel small. And I had let him. I had convinced myself that his behavior was normal, that all relationships had their struggles, that I was lucky to have someone who wanted to be with me at all. But the truth was, Daniel had systematically eroded my self-worth, piece by piece, until I believed his narrative. Until I believed I would never find someone better. But then something happened that changed everything. 6 months after that devastating night, my company held its annual corporate dinner. It was a black-tie event, held at one of the most prestigious hotels in the city, designed to celebrate the year's achievements and foster connections between different departments and leadership. Daniel worked for the same company, though in a completely different division. He was a mid-level financial analyst, competent but unremarkable. His boss, Richard Lawson, was the chief financial officer, a man Daniel spoke about with a mixture of admiration and envy. I had heard Daniel mention Richard countless times. He idolized him. He studied his leadership style, analyzed his career moves, and constantly strategized about how to get closer to him, how to impress him, how to climb the corporate ladder and eventually reach Richard's level. But I had never actually met Richard Lawson. Until that night. The ballroom was stunning, with crystal chandeliers casting warm golden light across white-clothed tables adorned with elegant floral arrangements. The air buzzed with conversation and laughter as colleagues mingled, champagne glasses clinking in celebratory toasts. Daniel and I arrived together, though it felt more like we arrived separately in the same car. He spent most of the cocktail hour networking, introducing himself to senior executives, laughing too loudly at their jokes, desperate to be noticed. I wandered the room, greeting colleagues I knew, accepting congratulations on my recent promotion, trying to enjoy the evening despite the growing distance I felt from the man I had come with. And then I saw him. Richard Lawson stood near the bar alone, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp and observant. He was tall, perhaps in his early 40s, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that spoke of understated elegance rather than flashy wealth. There was something calm about him, something grounded that immediately set him apart from the corporate peacocks strutting around the room. Our eyes met across the space, and he smiled. Not a practiced, networking smile, but a genuine one that reached his eyes. Before I could overthink it, he walked over. "You look like you are contemplating an escape route," he said, his voice warm with humor. I laughed, surprised by his directness. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way," he replied, extending his hand. "Richard Lawson." "Clara Mitchell," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive, confident but not dominating. "Ah, the newly promoted senior marketing director. Congratulations. I have heard excellent things about your work." I blinked, taken aback. "You have heard about me?" "Of course. Your campaign for the spring product launch increased engagement by 63%. That kind of result does not go unnoticed." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Not just because he knew about my work, but because he spoke about it with genuine respect. He saw me as a professional, as someone whose contributions mattered. When was the last time Daniel had acknowledged my accomplishments that way? I could not remember. We ended up seated at the same table for dinner, a twist of fate orchestrated by the event planners who arranged seating to encourage cross-departmental networking. Daniel was seated several tables away, surrounded by colleagues from his division, completely unaware that I was spending the evening beside his boss. And what an evening it was. Richard and I talked about everything. We started with work, discussing the challenges of leadership, the importance of fostering team culture, the balance between ambition and integrity. But the conversation quickly moved beyond the professional. We talked about books. He loved historical fiction and biographies of great leaders. I loved contemporary literary fiction and poetry. We debated the merits of different authors, recommended titles to each other, discovered shared favorites. We talked about travel. He had spent a year backpacking through Southeast Asia in his 20s, an experience that shaped his worldview. I had always dreamed of visiting Japan, drawn by the culture, the history, the beauty of the temples and gardens. We talked about what it meant to value someone, to truly see them, respect them, support them, to build a partnership based on mutual admiration rather than power dynamics. And I realized, with startling clarity, that I had never had a conversation like this with Daniel. Daniel talked at me, not with me. He lectured, explained, corrected, dismissed. He never asked me questions the way Richard did. He never seemed genuinely curious about my thoughts, my dreams, my inner world. Richard listened. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details I mentioned in passing and referenced them later in the conversation. He made me feel heard in a way I had not experienced in years. The evening flew by. Before I knew it, people were beginning to leave, the ballroom slowly emptying as the night drew to a close. Richard glanced at his watch, then back at me with what looked like genuine disappointment. "I suppose I should let you get back to your evening," he said. I nodded, though I found myself not wanting the conversation to end. "This was lovely," I said, meaning it. "Thank you for such wonderful company." "The pleasure was entirely mine, Clara." He paused, then added, "I hope we can continue this conversation sometime. Perhaps over coffee." My heart skipped. I would like that. We exchanged contact information, and as we parted ways, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Daniel barely spoke to me on the drive home. He was in a foul mood, complaining about his colleagues, about office politics, about how he deserved more recognition than he was getting. I stayed silent, my mind replaying the evening with Richard, treasuring the memory of what genuine connection felt like. Over the following weeks, Richard and I crossed paths more often. It started professionally. We were both invited to a strategic planning meeting for an upcoming company initiative that required collaboration between marketing and finance. Richard led the meeting with grace and intelligence, asking insightful questions, valuing input from everyone in the room, creating an environment where ideas could flourish. I found myself drawn to his leadership style, so different from the toxic, ego-driven approaches I had witnessed elsewhere in the corporate world. After the meeting, he approached me. "Your presentation was exceptional, Clara. The market analysis you provided will be invaluable as we move forward." "Thank you," I said, warmth spreading through me at his praise. "I have been meaning to follow up on that coffee invitation," he continued. "Would you have time this week?" I hesitated, thinking of Daniel, of the complications this could create. But then I thought of how Daniel had treated me, how he had dismissed my promotion, how he had told me I would never find someone better, and I realized I did not owe him an explanation for having coffee with a colleague. "I would love to," I said. We met at a small cafe near the office, a quiet spot tucked away from the corporate lunch crowds. The atmosphere was intimate, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that invited long conversations. And we talked. For hours. Richard told me about his journey to becoming CFO, the struggles, the failures, the moments when he questioned whether he was on the right path. He spoke with humility and self-awareness, never boasting, always acknowledging the people who had helped him along the way. I told him about my own career path, about the obstacles I had faced as a woman in a male-dominated industry, about the mentors who had believed in me when I had not believed in myself. But we also talked about more personal things. He had been married once in his 20s, a relationship that had ended amicably when they both realized they wanted different things from life. He had no children, though he had always imagined he might someday. He valued deep, meaningful connections over superficial ones. He believed in building a life with intention, not just letting it happen to him. I found myself opening up in ways I had not with anyone in years. I told him about my relationship with Daniel, though I did not name him at first. I talked about feeling unseen, unvalued, about slowly losing myself in a partnership that felt more like a hierarchy than a collaboration. Richard listened with complete attention, his eyes never leaving mine. "You deserve better than that, Clara," he said quietly. The words hit me hard. Not because they were dramatic or shocking, but because they were said with such genuine conviction. He truly believed I deserved better. And hearing it from him made me start to believe it too. Our coffee meetings became regular. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes we talked about work, but more often we talked about life, about books we were reading, about places we wanted to visit, about our hopes and fears and dreams. There was nothing inappropriate about our friendship. We never crossed professional boundaries. But there was an undeniable connection, a chemistry that went beyond the platonic. And I knew Daniel would not understand. So I did not tell him. I justified it by reminding myself that Richard was a colleague, that our conversations were innocent, that I had every right to have friends outside my relationship. But deep down I knew the truth. I was beginning to fall for Richard Lawson. And I was still living with a man who made me feel worthless. The reckoning came on a Tuesday evening in March. I had stayed late at the office, working on a project with Richard and a few other team members. It was productive and energizing, the kind of collaboration that reminded me why I loved my work. When I finally arrived home around 9 o'clock, I found Daniel on the couch, his phone in his hand, his expression dark. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "At work. I told you I would be late tonight. We had a deadline." He stood up, his jaw clenched. "You have been working late a lot recently, Clara." "Yes, because I have a demanding job. That is what happens when you get promoted." He crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "Or maybe it is something else." My heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the fact that you are never home anymore. You are always at the office, always in meetings, always too busy for me." I stared at him, incredulous. "Daniel, you have never cared about spending time with me. You are always on your laptop, always watching sports, always out with your friends. When was the last time you planned a date for us? When was the last time you asked about my day?" He scoffed. "Do not turn this around on me. You are the one who is acting differently. You are the one who is pulling away." He was not wrong. I was pulling away. But not because I wanted to hurt him. Because I was finally realizing I deserved more than what he was giving me. "Maybe I am pulling away because you make me feel terrible about myself," I said, my voice shaking. "Maybe I am tired of being told I am too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Maybe I am tired of being with someone who thinks I should be grateful to have him." Daniel's expression hardened. "So that is it. You are going to throw away 3 years because you are suddenly too good for me." "I never said I was too good for you. You did not have to. It is written all over your face. Ever since that promotion, you have been different. You think you are better than me now." "That is not true. Is not it? Be honest, Clara. You think you can do better. You think there is someone out there who is going to treat you like a queen, who is going to worship the ground you walk on. But let me tell you something." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "You will never find someone better than me. No one else is going to put up with your insecurities, your mood swings, your need for constant validation. I have been patient with you, Clara. I have been good to you. And this is how you repay me." I felt tears streaming down my face, but I did not wipe them away. "You have not been good to me, Daniel. You have been cruel. And I am done." His eyes widened. "You are breaking up with me?" "Yes." "Over what?" "Over some stupid argument. Over 3 years of being made to feel small. Over being told I will never find someone better. Over being with someone who does not see my worth." He laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "Fine. Leave. But do not come crawling back when you realize what you had. Because I will not be here waiting. I would not dream of it. I walked past him, into the bedroom, and started packing my things. My hands trembled, but my resolve did not waver. I called my best friend Lydia, who lived across town. She answered on the second ring. Clara? What is wrong? I need a place to stay tonight. I just left Daniel. I will be there in 20 minutes. And she was. That night, sitting in Lydia's guest room, I felt a mixture of grief and relief. Grief for the relationship I had invested so much in. For the future I had imagined that would never be. But relief too. Relief that I had finally found the courage to walk away. Relief that I would never again have to hear Daniel tell me I was not good enough. Relief that I was finally free. 2 weeks after I left Daniel, he called me. I almost did not answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Clara. His voice was different. Softer. Almost vulnerable. Can we talk? I do not think there is anything left to say, Daniel. Please. Just give me 10 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled. He had clearly not been taking care of himself. I made a mistake, he said immediately. I should not have said those things to you. I should not have treated you the way I did. I was wrong, Clara. I know that now. I sat across from him, unmoved. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you back. I miss you. I realize now how much you meant to me. How much I took you for granted. I can change. I will change. Just give me another chance. I studied his face, searching for sincerity. Maybe it was there. Maybe he really did regret his behavior. But it did not matter. Daniel, I do not want to get back together. His face fell. Why not? If I am promising to change. Because even if you do change, it does not erase what happened. It does not undo the damage. And honestly, I do not love you anymore. I have not loved you for a long time. I just did not realize it until now. He stared at me, stunned. You do not mean that. I do. He leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening again. There it was. The defensiveness. The inability to accept responsibility. You are making a huge mistake, Clara. Maybe. But it is my mistake to make. I stood up to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. Is there someone else? I pulled my arm free. That is none of your business. His eyes narrowed. There is not there? Who is he? Goodbye, Daniel. I walked out of that coffee shop and never looked back. But Daniel's question lingered in my mind. Was there someone else? Richard and I had not crossed any lines. We had not kissed, had not held hands, had not declared feelings for each other. But the emotional connection was undeniable. And I knew deep down that my growing feelings for Richard had played a role in my decision to leave Daniel. I felt guilty about that for approximately 5 minutes. Then I remembered that I had every right to realize I deserved better. That recognizing my worth, even if it was catalyzed by meeting someone who treated me with respect, was not a betrayal. It was self-preservation. A week later, Richard and I met for our usual coffee. He noticed immediately that something had changed. You seem lighter, he said, smiling. Freer. I smiled back. I ended things with Daniel. His expression shifted, something flickering in his eyes. Surprise? Relief? Hope? How are you feeling about that? Honestly, I feel like I can breathe again. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. It was the first time he had touched me beyond a handshake or a polite shoulder pat. You deserve to be with someone who sees how extraordinary you are, Clara. My heart raced. Richard. I know the timing is complicated. I know you just got out of a relationship. But I need you to know that I care about you. Deeply. And when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would like to explore what this could be between us. Tears pricked my eyes, but they were good tears. Healing tears. I care about you too, I whispered. So much. He smiled. And it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then we will take this slow. No pressure. No rush. Just us. And that is what we did. Over the following months, Richard and I built something beautiful. We went on dates, real dates where he planned thoughtful activities and listened to my stories and made me laugh until my sides hurt. We traveled together, spending a long weekend in the mountains where we hiked during the day and talked by the fire at night. We introduced each other to our friends and families, and everyone could see what we had. He never made me feel small. He never dismissed my feelings or told me I was too sensitive. He celebrated my successes and supported me through my challenges. He asked me what I wanted to build in life, and then he helped me build it. 6 months after we started dating, Richard asked me to move in with him. 8 months after that, he proposed. We were in Japan, standing in a garden in Kyoto, surrounded by cherry blossoms. He got down on one knee and told me that I was the most remarkable person he had ever met, that he wanted to spend the rest of his life making me as happy as I made him. I said yes through tears and laughter, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. We planned a wedding for the following spring. It was held at an elegant estate overlooking the ocean, an intimate gathering of 150 of our closest friends and family. The day was perfect. The weather cooperated, giving us clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. The flowers were stunning, the food was exquisite, and the music was exactly what we had wanted. But the most memorable part of the day was not any of that. It was the moment I walked down the aisle and saw Richard waiting for me at the altar, his eyes shining with love and admiration. And it was the moment I glanced at the pews and saw Daniel sitting there. My heart stopped. I had not invited him, but his department had been invited, a courtesy extended to Richard's team since it was company policy to invite senior staff to executive weddings. Daniel had come, and he had brought a date, a pretty blonde woman I did not recognize, clearly an attempt to prove he had moved on. But when our eyes met, I saw the truth. He had not moved on. He was devastated. His face went pale as he realized what was happening, as he understood that the woman he had told would never find someone better was marrying his boss, the man he had spent years trying to impress, the man whose respect he craved more than almost anything. And I had it. I had Richard's respect, his love, his partnership. I had everything Daniel had told me I would never deserve. I looked away, focusing on Richard, on the man who had shown me what real love looked like. The ceremony was beautiful. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, promises to honor each other, to build a life of mutual respect and support, to be partners in every sense of the word. When Richard kissed me, the crowd erupted in applause. And I knew, without looking, that Daniel was somewhere in that crowd, watching the life he had thrown away unfold before his eyes. At the reception, I danced with my new husband, surrounded by people who loved us and celebrated our union. Daniel left early, his date in tow, unable to stomach the sight of my happiness. I did not blame him. It must have been torture. But I also did not feel guilty, because this was not about revenge. This was not about proving him wrong or rubbing his face in my success. This was about me choosing myself, choosing my worth, choosing a partner who saw me as an equal, who valued me, who loved me for exactly who I was. That night, as Richard and I drove away from the venue, beginning our honeymoon and our new life together, I thought about Daniel's words one last time. You will never find someone better than me. And I smiled, because I had not just found someone better. I had found someone infinitely better. I had found a man who respected me, challenged me, supported me, and loved me without conditions or qualifications. I had found a partnership built on equality and admiration. I had found my home. Today, Richard and I have been married for 2 years. We have built a life that feels like a dream. We travel together, exploring new countries and cultures. We support each other's careers, celebrating successes and navigating challenges as a team. We have deep, meaningful conversations about everything from philosophy to our plans for the future. We are talking about starting a family. And when I imagine raising children with Richard, I feel excited, not afraid. Because I know our children will grow up seeing what a healthy, loving partnership looks like. Every now and then, I run into Daniel around town. Our city is not that big, and we work for the same company, so it is inevitable. The first few times were awkward. He would nod stiffly, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I would smile politely and move on. But recently something shifted. I saw him at a company event, and he approached me. Clara, Can I talk to you for a minute? I glanced at Richard, who was across the room chatting with colleagues. He caught my eye and nodded, giving me space. Sure, I said to Daniel. We stepped out onto a quiet balcony overlooking the city. I owe you an apology, Daniel said. A real one. Not the half-hearted one I gave you when we broke up. I crossed my arms, waiting. I was terrible to you. I made you feel small because I was insecure. I told you that you would never find someone better, because I was terrified you would realize you deserved more. And I was right to be terrified, because you did realize it. And you left. And I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I softened slightly. Daniel. I am not asking for another chance, he said quickly. I know that ship has sailed. I needed you to know that I am sorry. That I understand now what I did. And that I am trying to be better. For myself, and for whoever comes next. I studied his face. He looked sincere. Humbled, even. I appreciate that, I said. I forgive you, Daniel. I hope you find someone who is right for you. Someone who you will treat the way they deserve to be treated. He nodded, his eyes glistening. You look happy, Clara. Really happy. I am. He is a good man. Better than I ever was. He is a good man, I agreed. But more importantly, he is the right man for me. Daniel smiled sadly. I am glad you found that. We parted on better terms than I ever thought possible. And while I did not regret leaving him, I appreciated that he had grown enough to recognize his mistakes. It gave me closure I had not realized I needed. That night, lying in bed beside Richard, I told him about the conversation with Daniel. He listened quietly, his arm around me, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my shoulder. How do you feel about it? He asked. At peace, I said. For the first time since we broke up, I feel like that chapter is truly closed. He kissed the top of my head. You are an incredible person, Clara. Your capacity for forgiveness and growth is one of the many reasons I love you. I smiled, turning to face him. I love you too. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. Thank you for letting me love you. We fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found in each other exactly what we had been searching for all along. And I realized that Daniel's cruelty, as painful as it had been a gift in disguise. Because it forced me to confront what I deserved. It forced me to recognize that settling for less than mutual respect and admiration was not acceptable. It forced me to walk away from something comfortable but toxic, and to be open to something uncertain but beautiful. If Daniel had not told me I would never find someone better, I might never have started questioning whether he was right. If I had not questioned it, I might never have opened myself up to the possibility of Richard. And that would have been the greatest tragedy of all. So in a strange way, I am grateful to Daniel. Not for how he treated me, but for inadvertently pushing me toward the life I was meant to live. Richard and I are planning a trip to Italy next month. We are going to spend 2 weeks exploring Tuscany, drinking wine in sun-drenched vineyards, eating pasta in small trattorias, getting lost in medieval villages. We are also talking seriously about trying for a baby. The conversation fills me with joy and anticipation, because I know Richard will be an incredible father. Patient, kind, present. Everything a child could want. And I know that together, we will build a family rooted in love and respect. My career continues to flourish. I was recently promoted again, this time to Vice President of Marketing. Richard celebrated by taking me to my favorite restaurant and presenting me with a vintage first edition of my favorite novel. He sees my success as something to be celebrated, not threatened by it. He encourages me to dream bigger, to take risks, to go after what I want. He is my partner in every sense of the word. And every single day, I wake up grateful. Grateful that I found the courage to leave. Grateful that I found the wisdom to recognize what I deserved. Grateful that I found Richard. But most of all, grateful that I found myself. Because that is what this journey has really been about. Not about proving Daniel wrong, or marrying his boss as some kind of cosmic revenge, but about reclaiming my sense of self-worth. About refusing to settle for crumbs when I deserved a feast. About building a life that reflected my values and my dreams. Daniel told me I would never find someone better than him. But what he did not realize is that the real transformation was not about finding someone better than him. It was about becoming someone who knew she deserved better. And once I became that person, everything else fell into place. The months turned into years, and life with Richard became even richer than I had imagined possible. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural, effortless. Sunday mornings became sacred, reserved for sleeping in late, making elaborate breakfasts together, and reading the newspaper while our coffee grew cold. We created traditions, small rituals that belonged only to us. Every Friday evening, we would cook dinner together, trying new recipes from different cuisines around the world. Richard would pour us wine, and we would laugh as we inevitably made mistakes, adding too much spice or forgetting a crucial ingredient. But those imperfect meals, eaten at our kitchen island while we discussed our weeks, became some of my most treasured memories. We supported each other through professional challenges. When Richard faced a difficult restructuring at work that required him to make tough decisions about layoffs, I held him while he processed the weight of those choices. When I struggled with a demanding client who questioned every decision I made, Richard reminded me of my worth and helped me strategize solutions. We were not just romantic partners. We were best friends, confidants, collaborators in building a life. But of course, life is never without its complications. About 18 months into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. The moment I saw those 2 pink lines on the test, my world tilted. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the stick, my heart racing with a mixture of exhilaration and terror. I was going to be a mother. Richard and I were going to have a baby. When I told him that evening, his reaction was everything I could have hoped for. His eyes filled with tears, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "We are going to have a baby," he whispered against my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "We are going to have a baby," I repeated, the reality sinking in. He pulled back, cupping my face in his hands. "You are going to be the most incredible mother, Clara." I felt tears streaming down my face. "You really think so?" "I know so. Our child is the luckiest kid in the world to have you." That night, we lay in bed, his hand resting on my still flat stomach, talking about our hopes and dreams for this tiny life growing inside me. We discussed names, imagined what our child might look like, wondered whether they would inherit Richard's calm demeanor or my passionate intensity. It was perfect. Until it was not. At my 8-week appointment, the ultrasound technician went quiet. Too quiet. She excused herself, saying she needed to get the doctor. Richard and I exchanged worried glances, our hands gripping each other tightly. The doctor came in, her expression carefully neutral. She performed another ultrasound herself, moving the wand across my abdomen, studying the screen with focused intensity. Finally, she turned to us. "I am so sorry. There is no heartbeat." The words did not make sense at first. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "What do you mean?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "The fetus stopped developing. This is what we call a missed miscarriage. Your body has not yet recognized the pregnancy loss, which is why you are still experiencing pregnancy symptoms." The room spun. I could not breathe. I felt Richard's arm around me, holding me up, but everything felt surreal, like I was watching this happen to someone else. "Are you sure?" Richard asked, his voice breaking. "Could there be a mistake?" The doctor shook her head gently. "I am certain. I am so very sorry." The next few days were a blur of grief and medical procedures. I opted for a medication-assisted miscarriage, wanting to avoid surgery if possible. The physical pain was intense, but it paled in comparison to the emotional devastation. I had been pregnant for such a short time. I had barely begun to imagine the life we would have with this child. But the loss felt monumental, earth-shattering. Richard grieved too, but he also held space for my grief. He took time off work to be with me. He made me tea and held me while I cried. He did not try to fix it or minimize it. He just stayed present, offering his strength when I had none left. One night, about a week after the miscarriage, I broke down completely. What if there is something wrong with me? I sobbed. What if I cannot have children? What if I cannot give you the family you want? Richard pulled me close, his own tears falling into my hair. "Clara, listen to me. I did not marry you to have children. I married you because I love you. Because you are my person. If we have children, that will be wonderful. But if we do not, we will still have a beautiful life together. You are enough. You have always been enough. His words did not take away the pain, but they reminded me that I was not alone in it. That even in this devastating loss, I had a partner who loved me unconditionally. We took several months to heal, both physically and emotionally. We went to therapy, both individually and as a couple, processing our grief and figuring out how to move forward. And slowly, gradually, the sharp edges of the pain softened. We decided to try again when we felt ready. Not to replace what we had lost, but to honor our desire to build a family. It took time. Months of negative pregnancy tests, of hoping and being disappointed, of questioning whether it would happen for us. But finally, 11 months after the miscarriage, I saw those two pink lines again. This time, the joy was tempered with caution. We did not celebrate immediately. We waited for the first ultrasound, holding our breath, terrified of another loss. But when the doctor turned the screen toward us and we heard that strong, steady heartbeat, Richard and I both broke down in tears. Our baby was healthy. Our baby was growing. Our baby was real. The pregnancy was not easy. I experienced severe morning sickness that lasted well into the second trimester. I was exhausted constantly, struggling to balance the demands of work with the physical toll of growing a human. But Richard was there every step of the way. He rubbed my feet when they swelled. He made me ginger tea when nausea overwhelmed me. He came to every single doctor's appointment, asking questions, taking notes, being as involved as possible. We found out we were having a daughter, a little girl. We decided to name her Sophia Grace. Sophia meaning wisdom. Grace meaning favor and blessing. Because she was both. She was our hard-won miracle, the child we had hoped for and fought for and grieved for before we ever met her. As my belly grew, so did my sense of anticipation. I decorated the nursery in soft yellows and grays, with whimsical animal prints and shelves lined with books I could not wait to read to her. Richard assembled furniture, his face concentrated in determination as he followed instruction manuals, and measured twice before cutting once. We took prenatal classes together, learning about labor and delivery, about caring for a newborn, about the massive life change that was hurtling toward us. And through it all, I kept thinking about how different this was from what my life would have been with Daniel. Daniel would not have rubbed my feet or made me tea or come to every appointment. He would have complained about the cost of baby furniture and rolled his eyes at my nesting instincts. He would have made my pregnancy about him, about the inconvenience it caused him, about how I was not paying enough attention to his needs. But Richard made it about us. About the family we were creating together. About supporting me through one of the most challenging and transformative experiences of my life. I gave birth to Sophia on a rainy Tuesday in November. Labor was long and difficult, 32 hours of contractions that felt like my body was being torn apart. But Richard never left my side. He held my hand, breathed with me through contractions, advocated for me with the medical staff when I was too exhausted to speak. And when Sophia finally arrived, screaming and perfect and covered in vernix, Richard cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. They placed her on my chest, and I looked down at this tiny, incredible human we had created. She had Richard's nose and my eyes. She had a full head of dark hair, and the longest eyelashes I had ever seen. She was perfect. "Hello, Sophia," I whispered, my voice hoarse from hours of labor. "We have been waiting so long to meet you." Richard leaned down, kissing my forehead and then Sophia's. "You did it, Clara. You are amazing." In that moment, holding our daughter, I felt a completeness I had never experienced before. This was my family. This was my home. This was the life I had built on the ashes of the one that had tried to break me. The first few months of motherhood were brutal. I had read all the books, taken all the classes, but nothing prepared me for the reality of caring for a newborn. The sleep deprivation was unlike anything I had experienced. I walked around in a fog, existing on 2-hour stretches of broken sleep, my body still healing from birth while trying to keep another human alive. Sophia was colicky, screaming for hours every evening despite our best efforts to soothe her. I cried alongside her more times than I could count. feeling helpless and overwhelmed. But Richard was there, taking night shifts when he could, walking Sophia around the living room at 3 in the morning while I collapsed into bed for a precious hour of sleep. He changed diapers and did laundry and cooked meals. He told me I was doing a great job even when I felt like I was failing. Slowly it got easier. Sophia's colic resolved. She started sleeping in longer stretches. I began to feel more like myself again. And I fell completely in love with motherhood. With the way Sophia would gaze up at me while nursing, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. With her gummy smiles that lit up her entire face. With the baby sounds she made, the coos and gurgles and squeals that formed her earliest attempts at communication. Richard was an incredible father. He was patient and gentle and utterly devoted. He read to Sophia every night, even when she was too young to understand the words. He sang to her, making up silly songs that made me laugh. He changed as many diapers as I did, fed her bottles when I needed a break, and never once complained about the sacrifices required of parenthood. Watching him with our daughter, I fell in love with him all over again. This was what partnership looked like. This was what it meant to build a family together. When Sophia was 6 months old, I returned to work part-time. It was difficult leaving her, even though we had found an excellent nanny. But I also found it fulfilling to use my professional skills again, to have conversations about something other than feeding schedules and diaper changes. Richard and I continued to prioritize our marriage even amid the chaos of new parenthood. We had date nights once a week, even if that just meant ordering takeout and watching a movie after Sophia went to bed. We made time for physical intimacy, even when we were exhausted. We communicated openly about our needs, our struggles, our frustrations. It was not always easy. We argued sometimes, usually about household logistics or parenting decisions. But we argued fairly, without cruelty or contempt. We listened to each other, sought to understand rather than to win. We apologized when we were wrong and forgave when we were hurt. We modeled the kind of relationship we wanted Sophia to see, the kind that would teach her what healthy love looked like. One afternoon, when Sophia was about 9 months old, I was at the park with her, pushing her on the baby swings. She was laughing, her whole body wiggling with delight every time the swing went up. I heard a familiar voice behind me. Clara. I turned to see Daniel standing a few feet away. He looked good, healthier than the last time I had seen him. He was with a woman, not the same one from my wedding, someone new. She was holding the hand of a toddler, a little boy with curly hair. Daniel, I said, surprised. Hi. He walked closer, his expression tentative. This is Maya, my fiancée, and her son Tyler. I smiled at them. It is nice to meet you both. Maya smiled back warmly. Daniel has told me a lot about you. Congratulations on your marriage and your baby. She is beautiful. Thank you. Congratulations to you both as well. Daniel looked at Sophia, who was still swinging happily, oblivious to the adult conversation happening around her. She looks like you, he said softly. People say she has my eyes, but Richard's everything else, I replied. There was a pause, slightly awkward but not hostile. I am glad you are happy, Clara, Daniel said, and he sounded like he meant it. You deserve it. I am glad you are happy too, Daniel. You really do. We chatted for a few more minutes, surface-level conversation about parenthood and work and life. Then Tyler started fussing, and they excused themselves to continue their walk. As I watched them go, I felt nothing but peace. No lingering resentment, no secret satisfaction at having won some imaginary competition. Just genuine happiness that Daniel had found someone who was right for him. And gratitude for the journey that had led me to where I was. I looked back at Sophia, who was reaching her chubby arms toward me, wanting to get out of the swing. I unbuckled her and lifted her into my arms, breathing in that sweet baby smell, feeling the solid weight of her against my chest. This was my life. This beautiful, imperfect, messy, wonderful life. And I had built it by refusing to settle, by believing I deserved more, by having the courage to walk away from what was familiar but toxic, and walk toward what was uncertain but true. That evening, I told Richard about running into Daniel. We were in the kitchen, working together to make dinner while Sophia played with her toys on the floor. The scene was domestic and chaotic, Exactly the kind of evening I used to dream about during my years with Daniel. How did that feel? Richard asked, chopping vegetables while I stirred pasta sauce. Honestly, it felt fine. Good even. He seems happy. I am happy. It felt like closure in a way I did not know I still needed. Richard smiled. I am glad. You know, I have never been threatened by your past with Daniel. Your history made you who you are. And I happen to be wildly in love with who you are. I set down the spoon and walked over to him, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. Have I told you lately how much I love you? He turned in my arms, kissing me softly. Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. I laughed, resting my forehead against his chest. You changed my life, Richard Lawson. No, he said, tilting my chin up so I was looking into his eyes. You changed your own life. I just got lucky enough to be part of it. Sophia squealed from her spot on the floor, and we both turned to see her pulling herself up on the couch, wobbling but determined. Oh my God, is she going to stand? I gasped, grabbing my phone to capture the moment. Richard moved closer, ready to catch her if she fell. Come on, Sophia. You can do it, sweetheart. She stood there for a glorious 3 seconds, grinning with pride at her accomplishment, before her legs gave out and she plopped back down on her diaper-cushioned bottom. But she was not discouraged. She immediately started pulling herself back up, trying again. And in that moment, watching my daughter refuse to give up, I saw a reflection of my own journey. I had fallen. I had been knocked down by someone who told me I was not good enough. But I had pulled myself back up. I had tried again. And I had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. As we sat down to dinner that night, our little family of 3 gathered around the table, I offered a silent prayer of gratitude. Gratitude for second chances and new beginnings. Gratitude for a partner who saw my worth and reflected it back to me every single day. Gratitude for a daughter who would grow up knowing what healthy love looked like. And gratitude for the woman I had become. The one who had learned that she did not need someone else to define her value. Because the truth was, Daniel had been wrong about so many things. But he had been especially wrong when he said I would never find someone better. Because I had found someone better. I had found myself. And once I found myself, everything else I needed found me too. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Sophia grew into a curious, bright-eyed toddler who asked endless questions and had opinions about everything. She loved books, just like Richard and me. She loved dancing around the living room to music. She loved helping in the garden, her small hands digging in the dirt while we planted vegetables and flowers. When she was 2.5, I became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than my first, perhaps because my body knew what to do this time, perhaps because I was not carrying the fear of miscarriage quite so heavily. We had a son, Oliver James. He was born on a sunny spring morning, arriving quickly and efficiently after a labor that lasted only 6 hours. Oliver was the opposite of Sophia in almost every way. Where she had been fussy and colicky, he was calm and content. Where she had fought sleep, he dozed peacefully for hours. He was an easy baby, and I felt almost guilty about how much simpler this newborn phase was compared to Sophia's. But Richard reminded me that every child is different, that there was no need to compare, that we were simply blessed with 2 wonderful, unique human beings. Sophia was initially jealous of the new baby who had invaded her territory. But slowly she warmed to him. She would bring him toys, sing to him in her off-key toddler voice, and declare proudly to anyone who would listen, "That is my baby brother." Watching my children together, I felt my heart expand in ways I had not known were possible. My career continued to flourish. By the time Oliver was born, I had been promoted to senior vice president. I led a team of 30 people, oversaw multiple major campaigns, and was frequently invited to speak at industry conferences. Richard and I navigated the challenges of 2 demanding careers and 2 young children by being relentlessly intentional about communication and support. We shared household responsibilities equally. We divided childcare duties based on our schedules rather than outdated gender roles. We prioritized time together as a couple and as a family. It was not always perfect. There were days when we were both exhausted, when the house was a mess, when we snapped at each other over something trivial. There were days when I felt guilty about working so much, or guilty about not working enough. There were days when I wondered if I was doing any of it right. But through it all, Richard was my partner, my equal, my teammate. And that made all the difference. When Sophia started preschool, I watched her walk into the classroom with confidence, waving goodbye to me without a backward glance. I stood outside, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the passage of time and the bittersweet reality of watching my baby grow up. Another mother approached me, offering a tissue and a sympathetic smile. "First day?" she asked. I nodded, laughing through my tears. "How do you ever get used to this?" "You do not," she said. "But it gets easier. And also harder. Parenthood is a paradox like that." We chatted for a few minutes, and she invited me to join a group of preschool parents who met for coffee once a week. I accepted, grateful for the community, for the reminder that I was not alone in this journey. Over the years, I built a network of friends who were also navigating careers and families. We supported each other through potty training disasters and sleep regressions and picky eating phases. We celebrated promotions and birthdays and small victories. We created a village for our children and for ourselves. Richard and I continued to prioritize date nights, even as they became harder to schedule. We hired a babysitter twice a month and went out for dinner, to movies, to concerts. We kept our relationship alive and vibrant amid the chaos of raising young children. And we kept growing together, evolving, learning. One evening, when Sophia was 5 and Oliver was 2, Richard and I sat on the back porch after putting the kids to bed. The stars were out, the air was warm, and we were both exhausted but content. "Do you ever think about how different your life would have been if you had stayed with Daniel?" Richard asked, his hand finding mine in the darkness. I considered the question. Sometimes. But not with regret. More with wonder, I suppose. Wonder at how one decision, one moment of courage, can completely change the trajectory of your life. "I think about it too," he admitted. "I think about what would have happened if we had not been seated together at that dinner. If we had not started talking. If I had not asked you for coffee. But we were. And we did. And here we are." "Here we are," he echoed, lifting my hand to his lips and kissing my knuckles. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of cars passing by. "Clara," Richard said eventually, his tone serious. "Yes. Thank you for choosing me. For choosing us. For building this life with me." I turned to look at him, this man who had shown me what real love looked like. "Thank you for giving me a reason to choose it," I replied. "Thank you for being the kind of partner who makes me want to be better, do better, love better." He pulled me close, and we sat there under the stars, two people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together. As I drifted off to sleep that night, curled up against Richard's side, I thought about Daniel one last time, not with anger or bitterness, but with a strange sense of gratitude, because his cruelty had been the catalyst for my transformation. His words had been the spark that ignited my journey toward self-worth. His inability to see my value had forced me to see it for myself. And once I saw it, everything changed. I learned to demand respect, not just hope for it. I learned to walk away from situations that diminished me. I learned that being alone was better than being with someone who made me feel lonely. Most importantly, I learned that I was enough, just as I was, without needing someone else's validation or approval. And once I learned that lesson, once I truly internalized it, I became magnetic to the kind of love I deserved. Richard did not complete me. I was already complete. But he complemented me. He enhanced my life without being necessary to it. He was the partner I had chosen from a place of strength and wholeness, not desperation and need. That was the difference between my relationship with Daniel and my relationship with Richard. With Daniel, I had been trying to earn love, constantly working to prove I was worthy of being chosen. With Richard, I simply was loved. Not because I had earned it, but because he saw me clearly and loved what he saw. The years continued their inevitable march forward. Sophia started elementary school, coming home each day with stories about her friends and her teacher, and what she learned. Oliver grew out of toddlerhood, and into the energetic chaos of being a preschooler. Richard and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, then our 10th. Each year, we renewed our commitment to each other, to our family, to the life we were building. I continued to advance in my career, eventually becoming Chief Marketing Officer. It was a position I had dreamed about for years, and achieving it felt like the culmination of decades of hard work. On the day my promotion was announced, Richard surprised me by having flowers delivered to my office. The card read, "To the most incredible woman I know, I have always believed in you. I always will. Love, Richard." I cried reading those words, remembering how different things had been when I received my last promotion, remembering Daniel's dismissive response, his need to make my success small so he could feel big. But Richard celebrated my success without feeling threatened by it. He was proud of me, genuinely and wholly proud. That evening, we went out to dinner with Sophia and Oliver. We toasted with sparkling cider for the kids and champagne for the adults. We laughed and celebrated and made memories. And I looked around the table at my family, at the people I loved most in the world, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still thought about Daniel's words. "You will never find someone better than me." And every single time I smiled. Because I had not just found someone better. I had found a whole life that was better. A career I loved. Children who brought me joy. Friends who supported me. A partner who respected me. I had found myself. And that was the greatest discovery of all. Now, as I stood in my office, looking out over the city skyline, I thought about all the women who might be in situations similar to what I had experienced. Women who were being told they were not good enough, who were being made to feel small, who were staying in relationships that diminished them because they had been convinced no one else would want them. I wanted them to know the truth that it took me too long to learn. That being alone is better than being with someone who does not see your worth. That you are capable of more than you imagine. That leaving is hard, but staying in a situation that breaks you down is harder. That you deserve better. Always. Without exception. I picked up my phone and called Richard. "Hey love," he answered, warmth in his voice. "How is your day going?" "It is good," I said. "I am just taking a moment to appreciate everything we have built. To appreciate you." "I appreciate you too, Clara. Every single day." We talked for a few more minutes about logistics and dinner plans, and who would pick up the kids. The mundane, beautiful details of a shared life. When we hung up, I turned back to my work, a smile on my face. Because this was my life. The one I had fought for and built and protected. The one that almost did not happen because I had believed someone else's assessment of my worth. But I had learned. I had grown. I had claimed my value. And in doing so, I had found not just someone better, but something better. A life built on respect, love, partnership, and unwavering belief in my own worth. Daniel had been wrong. So profoundly, completely wrong. And I was grateful every day that I had the courage to prove it. If you enjoyed this story of transformation, courage, and finding true love, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of women who refused to settle, who found their strength, and who built the lives they deserved. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of empowered individuals who believe that we all deserve relationships built on respect, equality, and genuine love. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are worth more than anyone who makes you feel small could ever understand.